All right, this is the Farm Hop Life Men's Forum. I got a couple of people saying that they're going to be late. I am Matt of Farm Hop Life, and instead of doing current events, we're going to do personal events. So I just today met a guy through Montana Farm Link program. It's like a website where land seekers can meet up with land owners, see what they want to do with the property. And since we're going to be leaving, I wanted somebody to be here, take care of the property, make it their own. Plant trees, plant fruit, vegetables, have chickens, all this stuff. And so this guy, I had it's like a free ad you can put up on the website. I had it up for maybe a week, and this guy reached out to me and said, "Hey, sounds cool. Let's chat." And so I said, "Yep." So I talked to him last week, I think, sometime. And so he was here today. We talked for an hour and plus, and yeah, we really hit it off. He's super excited about it. We're super excited about it. I think we got few little details to hash out still, and we'll figure out as we go, I guess. He's moving to the Missoula area from somewhere in Idaho. I'm not sure if he wants me to say. And he's bringing his family with him. They'd like to. The housing's so ridiculous in Missoula that even through like the help of like VA and VA HUD and all these other programs or whatever he said, they still they're having difficulty finding him a house, that they might put him and his family up in a hotel until housing becomes available. It probably won't become available ever because housing's that crazy around here. So one of the things that he liked about my place, and I don't know how it came off, but he's got this school bus that he gutted that right now he's using for storage, but the long-term goal is to renovate it and that he and his family can live in it. And I'm like, dude, that's super cool because we're kind of going to be doing the same thing, living in a travel trailer. And I'm like, okay. So when he came over, I showed him like, here's where you could park your bus to work on it and whatnot, and walked him all around the property. Here's all the stuff. Here's what I was going to do with it. Not sure what you want to do with it. This is kind of like your thing now. If you want it. And so he's pretty pumped. It was between me and one other landowner, and the other landowner wanted him to be like, all right, like let's see your business plan, all these things, because if you're going to be here, you're going to do it for business and whatnot. And I didn't have, if he wants to have a business here doing selling extra produce, chicken, sheep, whatever, that's cool. I want him to be successful. I want him to be making money. If that's his choice. But his first and primary choice is to produce food for himself and his family, which is pretty good goal. I think starting out, not setting a goal that's attainable makes a lot of sense. And he goes, maybe down the line, I'd do business stuff. And so that's what I was more laid back in that regard than the other lady that he was looking at. So yeah, we're excited that might be a thing. He would also be cleaning the Airbnb. He and his family. I'm like, we can, like, we'll work out some sort of compensation. Like, we want you to like it here. And so there's the three things that intrigued him about our property is that he could work on his bus here so that he and his family can live in it. He can grow food here, and he can make money by cleaning our Airbnb after guests leave. Those were three things that intrigued him, and he, I don't know, we just connected on like a lot of levels, like personally, we didn't really get into politics, and I'm glad about that because we really didn't need to. We didn't need to like go down that road right away. But the way we think about things, like his wife stays at home and he works, and they're homeschooling their kids, and we're going to be homeschooling our kids. Just wants to, like, we were talking about like permaculture and Mark Shepard and Masibo Fukunawa. I totally butchered that name, and apologize, but yeah, just all these obviously Joel Salatin came up a couple times. All these different names in permaculture space that that we both recognize, and he's what things that he's learned, things that he wants to try. One thing that was specific was wanting to, what is it, like keyline design, where you contour contour the property so that water stays on the property and doesn't leave the property, which is super helpful here. It is a little bit arid, like it's drier here, and water can be hard to come by, especially in the summer. Just gets so dang dry. Like you'll have like if you don't have good ground cover, you get cracks in the dirt pretty bad. That it just water just runs right in. It's like the ground didn't even get wet. So, all right, we've got Josiah Young. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. I was going solo for a while there. I don't think I did too bad. So we'll
Sorry,
see how it.
we decided to wean the baby goats tonight, so I was chasing baby goats around. So
How was that?
not fun.
Not fun.
No, I just feel like a jerk taking them away from their moms. I want the milk, but I still
Sure.
feel like a jerk.
Yeah. You're a mama. You're a mama. You're like very maternal in that sense. Like, don't take my babies.
Yeah, they screamed for a little bit, but they all seemed to calm down. So
Good.
it was time.
So I'm changing the format a little bit because I don't watch the news, so it doesn't make sense to do current events, and I don't feel like talking about it anyways. So we're gonna do personal events instead, and I just explained for the last 7 minutes about how I had a guy come on the property that's gonna, like, I met him tonight. It's gonna take over when we leave this place and like manage it, do permaculture stuff, and yeah, so that's what I talked about. So like, what's in the last week? What's a personal event for you?
We had to drive to a wedding yesterday that normally would have cost, well, a lot less. And we would have made a weekend of it, but instead it was, I think it ended up being $160 in gas. So yeah, that was my personal event. Well, and I milled up some wood. I kind of, for
Nice.
the first time, managed to get the mill running. So
You
yeah.
like it?
Yeah, no, it's
Is it fun?
there's enough of a learning curve as far as, getting the feel of it and, kind of getting a routine down for how to handle the wood and all that stuff. But it was pretty fun. It was pretty cool to take what would have been a pretty useless cedar for me.
Yeah,
And I turned it into a 4x4. So
I did see that. Yeah, that was
yeah.
good.
So that's what's going on here. And of course,
Cool.
like I said, weaning off the goats, we have a cream separator due tomorrow. So we're gonna try. I've very mixed reviews on cream separators in general for goat milk. But we're going to give it a whirl. We're going to see about, actually making decent quantities of butter and ice cream and whatnot. So,
Goat
what's
ice
going on?
cream. Goat milk ice cream. That's cool. I got a question about goats. I guess it was I guess this could also be related about sheep too. When you like, I'm assuming you castrate your male goats, some of them, anyways.
Yeah.
Do you band them, or do you like slit the sack in like the micro method and bite the testicles and pull them out?
I've actually heard that it's easier on the animal to cut them out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any experience with that though. I have a little bit of experience with sheep. We used to
Mm-hmm.
help shear, and then we would help band and tag sheep for a friend. So I won't say that I grew up banding because that would be a lie. I did it for 2 or 3 years, but I have experience banding.
Okay.
So that's what we did with the goats, and we've
Okay.
only had to band two of them. We've actually been able to find buyers for them as bucklings as opposed to
Oh,
others. So
nice.
it makes my life easier. So I'm okay with it. But yeah,
Yeah.
we band. So
Okay. I was just curious. Is it just a sorry, I was reading a comment. Is it an experience thing that you banned over I guess removing the testes?
yeah, I mean for me it was what I was comfortable with, and I knew the first time we banded, it was for somebody. Like the first time that we did it with our goats, they wanted a wether, and I wasn't
Mm,
comfortable doing all of that for a goat that I wasn't going to keep myself to make sure that it was something that I knew what I was doing. And I don't want to leave the guy with one testy or be hurt when I sold him. So we banded it.
sure.
I was what I you know. So other than
I
that,
mean, you can
I'm not
still
opposed to it.
miss. You can still miss a nut. Um,
You can do
banded, can't you?
Either way, actually,
Yeah.
you can. So there's
Yeah.
nothing surefire. I know when I did it as a kid, there were two or three. I do distinctly remember that got down to just the only lonely ball. We got one or two. So they actually did do some knocking up that
Sure.
way. But yeah, overall, it was more just a matter of I'm a little more confident in it. I think long term, I wouldn't be opposed to cutting them out, but not right now, anyways. It's easier to get
Sure.
the wife on board to ban them, anyways. So
You don't know what it's like, how uncomfortable that is, dear. Like this is just, they don't band males like
yeah,
male
like
humans. Like that'd be awful. They get
it makes
vasectomies.
you hurt. It makes me hurt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no kidding. Um so long story's gonna be late, he said. He's always late, but that's fine. We love him anyways. Let's let's get into this topic. This is I wanted long story here because this was his idea. All we did was talk about the ethics last time. Here he is. Jeffrey.
Guys.
Are you here to screw up the live stream again?
Yeah, hopefully.
Oh no, it started already.
We'll see. I'm not sure how the connection will work. So let me know. Yep.
I think I can hear you. Okay.
yeah,
Jeez. Oh,
There
that's
we
so
go.
funny.
So really,
I'm gonna turn off the camera.
okay. We were just going over some personal events really quick. I think you said you met a mutual this weekend, and I think I know who it is. How'd that go?
It was cool, man. I just didn't have enough time to really hang out. But we had talked about some stuff when he was here that I was doing. He came down to visit, and I was able to arrange to get him a couple of hoop house frames. So took those up to him. He gave me some tomato plants. Took a little pork to him. Hung out for a little bit, and then had to get back on the road. But
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
pretty nice. Yeah, it's
Cool,
great
dude.
to turn these relationships into something more meaningful than just an occasional interaction online, for sure.
No, I agree,
no, it's awesome.
100%. Nice. So, this is your little this is your idea.
Okay.
So, well, I say that because you said there are a lot of vegan voices out there that are constantly attacking, and
Yeah.
you didn't quite get to say your piece last time. You just because of just the time. Is there anything you want to start out with? I've got Lauren's tweet screenshotted that I can share.
Yeah.
If we wanna go down that route.
Yeah, and I've posted similar tweets in the past because it's definitely something that I feel strongly about. I've traveled quite a lot. I've eaten food in lots of traditional cuisines from all over Latin America, India, and other places, and it's very true. You just don't find vegan anywhere, and much less over generations that it's been shown to sustain conception, gestation, and lactation in adult females,
Sure.
So
No, that makes sense. Let's get into this juicy tweet. How's it going, Guy? Guy Alaska's here with us.
Good. How's it going, guys?
Good. I'll try not to dox you this time.
Oh, that's all right.
So
Nobody's coming out here anyway.
So here's the tweet that blew up in Lauren's face. It's not like blew up bad, but for people listening on the audio, she wrote it's at Lauren in the Wild for those that don't know. The fact that there are 0 indigenous groups on the planet diet tells me that veganism is a modern socio-political movement based on the first world privileges of industrial agriculture and access to grocery stores. I'll die on this hill. And that was really wild. The fallout on that, I was messaging her a little bit today about it, and she's like, yeah, I didn't really care for all that attention. I shut it down because I was starting to get mad. And I'm like, I do not blame you at all. I had no idea this would happen. Decided to close it. 400 plus notifications every day is a little bit more than I want.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too much.
Well, I posted a picture of a calf that was born back in November, and someone asked, and I thought it was in good faith, what are your plans for the calf? And I said, well, in about 2 years, he'll become food. Man, they just pounced. I mean, it got really vicious. And like the problem I have with a lot of those voices is that they're very, very like dogmatic, and they can't make room for another view. It's just so completely, in their view, obviously a moral choice that you've made, an immoral choice that you've made. And I just have a real hard time with that dogmatic nature of their discourse.
Agreed. I wrote as a response, I said, discussion can't be done when one party is looking to be right with that gotcha instead of looking to learn. Like, they're not looking to learn. They just want to, like in your case, long story, like they asked you like as bait, like you got baited, dude. And like they got you and they just let you have it. Their so-called like principles and morals in whatever they think they want to think.
Well, yeah, I better let Josiah and Guy talk, but I just felt like it was a problem because if someone said, hey, I acknowledge there's limitations on B12, I acknowledge there's limitations in terms of how long this has been practiced and what's been proven, but I think it's worth it morally to figure out if we can make this happen. I totally respect that position. There's some really like long-term, high-profile vegans that have taken that position. So I wish I could find more people like that to dialogue with, because I think that's a worthwhile conversation.
Yeah, I mean, going on that tweet, I guess for me, and I mean, some of it comes back to the dogma thing, but just because it's never been done doesn't necessarily make it bad. But in this case, there are a bunch of studies that show that it's a deficiency. For sure, it's a lot harder to get everything you need if you're fully vegan, and it does rely on things that wouldn't have been possible not that long ago from a historical perspective. So I think overall, I mean it's a good argument to make, and from the dogma standpoint, I think again, if you can have the discussion and say, well, if we could figure out a way to do it, then it maybe it is, maybe it's not. um I think that's why those animals exist. um I think you can kind of even liken that to trophy hunting in Africa. The animals, I'm not saying that the CAFO, that how we treat some of the animals in industrial farming is a good thing, but when someone like you is raising pork, the pigs have a purpose, and without that purpose, they're not going to be kept alive. They're not going to be kept for any reason, and that's exactly what happened in Africa with the trophy hunting. If there's no reason for the villagers to keep elephants and lions around, right, then they don't keep the habitat, and then the elephants and the lions die. And so I don't think it's any different now. If or what happened with horses. I mean, there's way fewer horses now because we don't need horses anymore. Is there really a huge difference between getting a use out of them and letting them live and serve that purpose, or not? Yes, I'm eating them, but I'm giving them a good life up until that point, and then my purpose for them is fulfilled. They're an animal. So
Yeah.
So I'm going to take myself off mute a minute here. I got kids in the background. So, yeah, my big question with all of that for a lot of these folks who are vegan and are taking veganism as a moral stance is, it comes back to, we're we're creatures too. Whatever your faith tradition is, we're creatures too, and we eat too. And I think that to take a moral position on it, I don't know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because at any point that I don't know, that all I'm trying to do is, when I'm talking to these guys, I just want to find out what foundation they're arguing from. You know what I mean? If you want to take a moral position, that's fine, but they can never point to a real foundation. They just say we are obligated to not eat animals because we're whatever higher forms, or I mean, some will say even more highly evolved, which is just ridiculous, because if you're using the evolution path, and that's a lot of them won't talk about evolution, because if you want to talk evolution, we're biologically adapted, or quote unquote evolved, to eat meat, or at least be omnivorous. And you could even argue that there's indigenous groups out there that are quote unquote evolved or adapted to only eat meat, or to make that 90% of their diet. Go up in the Arctic Circle and find out how much vegetables and grains they eat up there. So yeah, it's the big question for me is always, where's your foundation? And that's the one answer you can never get is, what foundation are you arguing from? If you have a religion, if you have a certain code of ethics that you've developed through reason, fine. Let's start there together, so that we can have I guess an intelligent discussion. But we can never actually find a real foundation, and that comes back to the whole, where they're just dogmatic about it. And dogma's fine, but you gotta have something to back it up with. I mean, if you're dogma on shifting sands, that's problematic.
That's true. Because I think the common, correct me if I'm wrong, but for like carnivore, at least, and like omnivore, the foundation for that is that it's ancestral. We've always had a balanced diet, right? Like, meats, grains, blah, well, I guess not always grains, but, because that's its own thing, but, a wide variety of food that includes meat. Whereas the foundation for veganism or whatever is constantly changing. One of the things I've heard before from a friend of mine is his case is that top performing athletes have vegetarian or vegan diets. Um, I I did not look up if that's actually true, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless. And I'm wondering how, we're all about sustainable agriculture here, but what about sustainable health, right? Is the vegetarian or vegan diet sustainable? I guess a lot of people would argue that it is, but I'd assume that it's very supplemented.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I want to be careful, and I don't know what everyone's position is, but I want to be careful not to create a caricature of vegans' arguments, because I think that would be, I wouldn't want them doing that to me, and so I want to be
Sure.
careful about that. But I do think that one of the big challenges is that we don't really understand. I'm not a transhumanist. We don't really understand the full potential, because we don't know what the optimal diet is exactly, but we know what we evolved to become, big-brained, bipedal creatures that are at the top of the food chain, and so we're going to stick with that. I mean, we don't. There might be some things we could tweak, but it's going to be around the edges. It's going to be maybe optimizing certain ratios of, one I'm big on is like potassium and sodium, or omega-6, omega-3. I think it's going to be tinkering around the edges. It's going to be, avoiding modern things like, polyunsaturated fats and things like that. But it's not going to be eating bananas and cashews and kale for your main sustenance. I mean, one of the other things that things that one of the things that's really important to me is local, right? So I'd much rather have something local than even organic or whatever. I mean, like, I would compromise on other things to keep something local. Veganism could probably be practiced locally year round within about 10 degrees of the equator, maybe a little more, but it's not something could be done year round in very many climates in the world. So that there's a problem, because I think the carrying capacity of the earth, for local food, would be a much, much smaller population, and that's another question. Speaking of the
Sure.
moral foundations of your argument, right? What is the moral foundation of that argument? And the other thing that came to mind was, I watched the animals on the farm. This is something I've learned very much recently. Their existence is a competition for resources. And if you have not understood that that's what your life is dedicated to psychologically, even if you evolutionarily or whatever, even though you think of yourself as a rational creature, wait till you're hungry and see what happens, So
Absolutely.
a couple of things that have come to mind just listen to Guy and you talk, Matt.
I think on the athlete point, I think it's obviously you can go vegan, you can be full vegan, and you can even do it without a performance loss. There are athletes that do it. The notes are obviously is that you have these people, they're when you're competing at that high level, you're going to be having dietitians and the medical to know what you need exactly, to be eating to perform at that level, versus an average person. History is rife with examples of people that didn't eat what they needed to eat and they suffered for it. Scurvy is one right off the top of my head. I think
Sure.
what is it, gout, that you need iodine. Um,
don't remember.
I think that's what Ben Franklin had. I think, but iodine short insufficiencies can cause those, and so a lot of times, I mean, so the average person, they're not going to understand. They're not going to understand. They're not going to know. They may not even know that they're having an insufficient level of something in their diet. So I think with those things, like, you can get away with that if you're if you're a high performing athlete, that you may not otherwise be able to do as an average person. So
Sure. And those guys and women, obviously, just beat the crap out of their bodies. I mean, it's just like such a huge abuse. It seems like it would be more difficult to do it as a vegetarian or vegan than to just like eat meat. Like, the stereotypical like bodybuilder diet of like like skinless chicken breast with broccoli or something. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that like a stereotypical like weightlifter diet? Like I would just kind of
brown rice, broccoli, and skinless chicken breast.
Yeah, just bland. Like, you don't even get salt and pepper with it or something.
I kind of wonder, when people talk about high performing athletes being able to be vegans, I wonder if they're basically capitalizing on the stores that their body has built up in their youth, probably before they became vegan. And then they're able to, like Josiah said, they're able to get by because they're in great shape and all those kind of things. But ultimately, they're depleting those stores of nutrients or whatever it is in our bodies that makes us perform at a high level. And what I thought of was there was a person, I think it was a teenager in Great Britain, that had eaten only like McDonald's fries or something for 17 years. I can't remember the exact story, but basically they came to a point where her body started shutting down because it just didn't get enough nutrients.
That sounds awful.
Yuck.
It's gross.
Well, there's like, what I'm saying is, like, you come into the world with a certain endowment from your parents in terms of genetics and stuff like that, mother's milk and all those things. Great. If your development years go well, then you might be able to coast for a year or two. You might be able to stand a little less nutrient rich diet. Of course, maybe they're also consuming so many calories they get enough nutrients just because they're working so hard. They just consume a lot more calories than the average person could without, putting on 200 pounds.
Well, that'd be the other thing from a cost perspective. I would wonder, like, what it costs for them to get everything that they need from those sources, from as being a vegan, and if that's doable for the average person too. Not only to not know what you're missing, but for that to get all of those replacement, nutrients.
Yeah, talk about privilege. Talk about privilege.
Ultimately, yeah, and the other thing with those high performing folks is that I would also I think the thing that would make me the most curious is, do they, if they went back and forth, what's the performance difference between being vegan for a year and eating for a year? Are they a top performing athlete because of their diet, or in spite of it, or because they're genetically predisposed to be a top performing athlete?
That's a good question. Guy, did you have something to say?
Nope, sorry, I missed the question though.
We were just still talking about athletes. I've got a comment if you don't have one. I think you froze.
Yeah,
all right.
It went all beep beep boop boop, but now I can hear you.
All right. Did you have something to add on the athletes?
No, I guess my big question is back to the original claim that there are top performing athletes that are vegan. I was just curious. I mean, what did they mean by that? That all top performing athletes are vegan, or that the athletes who are performing at the top in each athletic field are vegan, or there's going to be some athletes who are vegan who also perform at a high level? I don't know, and how long they've been doing that. There's just a lot of questions.
Yeah, like Josiah said, are they in spite of their diet? And Christopher's comment here, he's basically validating what we said about the first few years. You can coast, but then your body starts to catch up with you because it's saying, "Hey, I'm not getting enough of those micronutrients or whatever it is that I would get if I was eating egg yolks and beef or whatever."
Right. And just for everyone else, the comment Christopher has is he said, I did a vegan diet for 5 years, and the first 3 years I coasted. The last two were a wreck. Had to go back to omnivore, and it still didn't help. So I wonder what the kind of like permanent damage almost, maybe not permanent, but longer lasting damage.
Well, I think the other thing is that your body may be depleted to such a degree that you need essentially a clinical dose of some of those nutrients to recover, as opposed to a daily dietary intake. You can almost need like a therapeutic dose instead of just some sort of subclinical amount of whatever vitamin or whatever you're missing, amino acid or whatever it is.
Yeah. I've got another comment here from Christopher that he had earlier. He said, "Today I learned about Brian Liver King Johnson and his ancestral lifestyle. He consumes many animal organs, mostly raw, and looks amazing, totally ripped. He does a workout called a barbarian, 75 pounds of kettlebells, 75-pound backpack, 125-pound sled, 40-pound leg weights, 20-pound wrist weights, and walk 1 mile. I wonder if he does that all at once. That'd be kind of intense.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look up this Brian Liver King Johnson. That guy sounds crazy. But that you always like the carnivore bros always like to rip on the soy boys, being like, look at this dude who's like 55 and only eats raw meat or whatever, and this guy is 10 years younger, been vegan for 20, and he's like halfway dead or something. He's like, he looks like terrible. That's like a common it's not apples to apples. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's a fair comparison. Like, if we're going to be realistic about what we're arguing about in terms of physical fitness, you need to take top performing athlete, or even just, and also just like regular people too. Like, it doesn't need to be like so extreme either.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think since we've moved to the farm, we started consuming more products from the farm. I definitely see a difference. And we're omnivores. We're not carnivores, but we're eating we're eating a lot more eggs, a lot more pork and beef, and I think it's made a difference in the health of everyone in the family since we started doing more from the farm.
It probably has a lot of benefits, not just eating the food that you produce, but also like a mental thing, like the mind and the body connected.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things I wish I kept a bibliography of this stuff, but I came across an article about a study that had been done where I think it was inadvertent, but if I remember correctly, they'd given some infants a formula with a lot more of some sort of soy in it or something than it was supposed to have, or something like that, and it had big impacts on things as basic as like sexuality and things like that. And I'm not here to talk about that. I don't want to.
Sure.
I mean, if you guys don't want to talk about it, I certainly don't. But
you'll be attacked regardless, so just go ahead.
Yeah, and so I just want to say what I'm prefaced with. I mean this in the most compassionate way. I feel like I mentioned on Twitter the other day that I felt like we were destroying the human genome inadvertently right now, and I worry about microplastics maybe more than other people. I worry about electromagnetic pollution more than some other people, but more than that, I worry about just nutrition. And if we're feeding ourselves polyunsaturated fats, we're feeding ourselves some of these grains that can only be produced in the quantities we're consuming them in, with high investment in petroleum-based fuels and things like that. there's just a lot of things that aren't ancestral about any of that. And that, when you think about the, people that build up toxicity to something because they eat it every day, even though it's not toxic in small amounts, eat it every day and it becomes toxic. What are we doing to ourselves? Why is fertility dropping so precipitously especially among men? Like, what are we doing to our genome? It worries me a lot. I mean, you think in 2050, it may be nearly impossible to conceive naturally, is what some of the predictions are right now.
That
It's
seems
scary.
wild.
Yeah.
And I think, to kind of piggyback on that, I think when you have these new things, I mean, I was previously, just because it's traditional doesn't mean it's right. But on the flip side to that is we've jumped whole hog into a bunch of these changes without knowing what they do either. So the advantage to sticking with something ancestral or traditional is at least you're not going to get anything worse. And maybe you find something better if you switch, but we, historically speaking, again, you have all of these instances where people didn't understand. I mean, we had lead in the water pipes. We had people that didn't understand that eating fruit wasn't bad for you. All these different cases where we misunderstood what we were doing to ourselves. And asbestos would be another good, like we didn't know, and then it turned out to be a disaster, right? And so again, whether these microplastics or the vegan diet or any of these other things, the concern for me, and it sounds like for you as well, is that you have these effects that we don't know, and whether whatever the reason is for the fertility, or all these other different things that can be popping up. These changes have all happened in the last 50, 60, 70 years. And I don't know which one of them is causing what, but it's a big case for not screwing around with what worked 70 years ago, which was a balanced diet. I'm not even a huge proponent of the carnivore diet. I think generally speaking, people go off very dogmatically about one end or the other. And the answer is usually somewhere right in the middle,
Sure.
as unusual as that take would be in today's world of one side or the other.
You have to pick a side, or
Yes.
you will get killed by the two teams. You brought up an interesting point, Josiah, about maybe like the shift happened too fast. Like maybe ancestral isn't bad. So let's just use some round numbers here. And this is just guessing. So think about how much the human diet has just changed in the last 100 years. It's up in the air. We really don't know how long humans have been around. It could be as little as 10,000. That's very low. Or 1,000,000 years. It's pretty high. So if you think about any of that between 10,000 years and 1,000,000 years, and our diet changing so drastically just in the last 100, that's no time at all for our bodies to try to adjust to what the standard traditional American diet.
No, you're right. So as a Christian, if you look at the biblical record, which is what I do, you've got people were eating grains, they were drinking beer and wine, and they were eating meat, and that was normal.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, in the last 100 years or whatever, we've come up with all these miracle things. We've got Crisco and high fructose corn syrup and all this other stuff, and we have seen a radical shift in those things. And the hard part is trying to figure out what's good and what's bad, because we've, at the same time that all these things are happening, we've also had lifespans go up. We've had good changes too. So figuring out which of those is a good thing and which of those is a bad thing, I think is going to be a little hard to do. I'm going to go on record and say that eating Crisco is probably a terrible thing.
You mean an engine lubricant isn't good for you?
And my Mountain Dew addiction, probably not a great thing either.
Is at least it's diet, right?
No.
Is it organic Mountain Dew?
No, I won't drink diet things. If I'm gonna drink the bad stuff, I might as well really just drink
The real sugar.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
Sure.
But we don't know. But I mean, we can start making some of these cases. All we've seen these negative effects. So now it would behoove us, if we're really being honest and genuine about seeing these problems, is to say, okay, what's causing the good things, and what's causing the bad things? We have a greater understanding of so many of these things. Why aren't we also looking to figure out the bad things too? Again, the fertility. Fertility is probably the big concerning one. I'd like to have grandkids. And 2050 is about the time that some kids would still be popping out kids. So I'd like to have grandkids.
It's the 5G.
Is it?
It honestly, I don't know. It could be. We can't say for sure it's not, and I'm just going to leave it there.
Well, I I was a frequent flyer before the pandemic, and I mean millions and millions of miles on Delta and American Airlines. So very much thought about that, maybe more than other folks, because I'm going through airport security at least 2 or 3 times a week. I'm flying in an airplane where there's more of the radiation coming from the sun, from space, is hitting you because there's not as much of the atmosphere above you. Lots of things that I thought about, and then carrying a cell phone in your pocket, it concerns me for sure. Some of that electromagnetic pollution. Now, some people feel like that's not going to be a big deal. Again, I think that sometimes we kind of obviate the effects of these very, very small things that ultimately become big things. The other thing, Josiah, talking about, the biblical record, talking about grain and beer and all those kind of things. The thing about most of those things is that they were not as abundant as they are now. Like when you have to go out and scythe your wheat to make bread, you're not eating it at every meal. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. No, the other good example actually is tobacco. 150 years ago, everybody would have said that they were a smoker. But the difference was that maybe you had a cigarette a day. You didn't have as many because we didn't grow tobacco as fast. It was laborious to get it and then to roll it and all those things. So no, you're absolutely right when it comes to those things. Grain wasn't something. It was a precious commodity. So they sure weren't throwing high fructose corn syrup and everything, because it wasn't something that was easy to get. So you're absolutely right about that. We've made it so easy. Or sugar's another great example. They had sugary things, but they didn't throw it in everything. It was hard to get. So
one thing I thought of today while thinking about this topic is obviously we already talked about the two extremes. The cow haters, or I guess the cow lovers, that they want them all protected or not eaten or whatever, and then the ultra carnivore diet people who think vegans should be thrown in a wood chipper because they're so stupid or something. By the way, I'm not in that camp. Like but one thing that is kind of concerning, it kind of seems like of the two groups, one of them is trying to take away the other's food source. And so there's a lot of tolerance in I think our little corner of Twitter, like be vegan, be vegetarian, do whatever, like your diet's your thing, whatever, don't care. Why are you trying to, it seems like, maybe I'm wrong, there's maybe a weird perspective that it seems like, no, you don't get to eat meat. We want you to eat Beyond Burgers. Like, you will eat our processed garbage, and you're going to like it. You know what? I'd like it better if you didn't like it. So, I want to feast on your tears. Kind of like, does it feel like that to anybody else? Kind of like, they're taking our guns. No one's trying to take your guns. Well, why are you acting like you're going to take our guns? Like that kind of attitude, like towards food, not guns.
Online, maybe. I've never had a conversation, and admittedly, I mean, this is anecdotal, but I've never actually had a run-in with somebody in real life that was advocating for those things. And this is coming from somebody, I do make fun of vegans in real life. I have a couple coworkers that are vegetarian, and one that's vegan. And I joke with them, not in any serious way, but I do joke about those things. But by and large, I think on the internet, you end up finding the militant and rabid crazy people more than you ever do in real life. Now, given that Long Story Farms, he may have run into some of these people, but I've never have. So I don't.
Sure.
I think it's probably just something that you see on the internet because they're not face to face, and everybody's brave on the internet.
That's true.
Yeah.
Long Story. Have you ever been attacked at a farmer's market that you were at?
No, I had one interaction with a guy a couple weeks ago that said, "Oh, I'm vegetarian." He goes, "What do you saw?" I said, "Meat." He goes, "I'm vegetarian." I'm like, "All right, have a great day." I mean, that wasn't too bad. I mean, online I've had more interactions, but I think the other thing is there's a couple of really good follows that I would recommend, like on Twitter and stuff. There's one guy, I'm not sure if I'm gonna say his name right, but Frank Mittloner or Loner. I'm not sure how he says it. He's a professor at UC Davis. Handle is at GHG Guru. And he kind of helps to, at least he's a guy that I like keeping up with, helps to kind of clear some of the stuff. There's some arguments to be made that cows produce greenhouse gas, and that may be true, but he kind of helps to clear the air there, and there's several other people. Belinda Fetke, I think is her name, and then there's I can't find the other guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but there's a couple I follow, and one of anyway, really good information about Eat Lancet and some of the people involved in Eat Lancet and why they do have this, what appears to be, like you said, an agenda to say that, hey, meat's not an appropriate thing to consume. And I think it's very concerning because I think like Josiah was saying, I think I've been saying as well, it's just like, are we willing to experiment on ourselves about everything all at once in the matter of a generation and a half, 2 generations? Is that really a sane thing to do as a species? I mean, if we're worried about collapse because of climate change, but we're not taking care of our own bodies, what does that say about the sustainability of the species?
Well, and I mean, to your point about experimentation, when in a science experiment, not that I'm a science guy by any stretch of the imagination, but in a science experiment, you have to have a control group, and then you want to control as many conditions as possible, right? So like if you throw all these things at us, I was saying earlier, you'll never know what's good and what's not. And that's unfortunate because we've made good strides in areas. So it is unfortunate that we don't really know. And so the reflex from someone like me, the reflexive action, especially for my kids, when I see these things in the news and whatnot, is to kind of knee jerk pull away from a lot of these things. And ultimately, I don't think it's going to end up with a negative effect on my kids, but it will be a pulling back into some of these more traditional things where, again, they won't be experiencing the negatives, but they may also be missing out on these positives that could happen from some of these advancements. So it's unfortunate that we haven't paced ourselves, thought about these things as we go crazy, towards the future.
What do you think about
so
guys?
the alternative? I just thinking about Chris's comment there about the Great Reset. You'll eat bugs and you'll be happy, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting too, because that's still an animal protein, or at least insect. I don't know if they fall into the category of animal, but talking about control groups, right? So these experiments have already been done. There's already been.
Can you try turning off your camera? Maybe that'll smooth out your audio a little bit.
So, yep. Is that better? Is that better?
Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, talking about control groups, there's already been studies done. There's already been control groups when you talk about radio waves of cell phones. I mean, cell phone manufacturers tell you how far you're supposed to hold the phone from your ear or from your
That's
brain,
true.
I should say. Uh, uh, so all these things we kind of already know bad things that things like having your entire diet be composed of soy and corn does. We know what radio waves going through your head over a long period of time does. We know what microwaves do to your body. We know what not eating any animal proteins does to your body. So, and maybe it is just all a crazy conspiracy theory, but I just wonder why people like the WEF and the Bilderbergers and everything like that pushing this kind of stuff, but at the same time showing up to their events in these private jets and not electric vehicles and having steak dinners and things like that. So that just be crazy. Maybe it really is a conspiracy.
That's true. That's true. We could, man, I don't know. It just seems easier to just to eat the meat. Like if you're trying to save the planet, there are ways to do it sustainably. We run in circles. That people like show us pictures at least once a week. What they're doing, how they're doing it, that it's, if it's an ethics thing that people are hung up on and like, it'll never get widely adopted. Like, not in our lifetime, you're right. But, we just got to keep moving those pieces forward and working on it. So I guess, I don't know.
I mean, even in the parts of India where they practice, traditional vegetarian diets, they use a lot of paneer and ghee and things like that, and they have integrated agriculture because the cows are still part of the agriculture. So even in that system, which does have some degree of history to it, but again using at least milk products, honey and other things, still has integrated agriculture. I think what we're seeing right now is that the yields on conventional agriculture are starting to collapse, at least in the areas where it's been farmed intensively for a couple generations. And you're seeing lots of people feel forced to make a change because they can no longer sustain their farms, and a lot of them are going to more of a no-till, cover cropping, integrated agriculture. There's lots of people making that type of switch. It may be faster than we think. It may be, and certainly it seems like with the fertilizer shortage this year, there's a push, maybe towards in that direction. But I mean, it might go faster than we think.
That's true.
I put in our chat here a couple of the people that I follow that are pretty strong voices on some of the stuff here. There's an Indian scholar as well that is working to push for more liberal approaches in India to diet, because as Western processed foods go into that market and replace traditional calories, that creates another switch where they're going from maybe traditional stuff to a modern version that looks or tastes the same, maybe, and they're having trouble, and lots of diabetes and lots of developmental issues and things, so it's just really, I think it's important to stay up on this stuff, because if people do want to take those ancestral foods away or criticize the lifestyle of someone like myself or Josiah, who's raising their own food, and some of that being animal sourced, then we need to be at least aware of what these people are doing. Those are a few people I follow that I think are worth taking a look at. There's some more. You'd probably be able to follow the chain and find them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the similar follows. For those on the audio, there's a couple of names towards the end here that I put up on the bottom screen. I guess I can try to link them in the notes. Because I'm not going to say them out loud. It would be boring as hell. So what do you guys want to wrap up on? Is there what did you want to have said that you wasn't said yet?
Well, I'll go if no one else will. I'll just say that if you want to eat locally and have integrated agriculture, animals are going to be a part of that. And I think if you do these things in a humane way, and you're thoughtful about it, and you're conscious of what the sacrifice you're asking of that animal, then that's a higher morality than screaming at someone for their food choices. So that's my point of view.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, just piggybacking on the end of that, we've talked about it a bunch of times, but in the end, like, being dogmatic about something generally doesn't work. Especially screaming at somebody. But you can find a middle ground, and there's ways to do this that work. So
yeah, just got to find a way that works for you, that your level of comfort. I actually have a cousin and her husband who actually went vegetarian, I think vegan actually, because they were so disgusted with how animals had been treated that I think now they're just getting into eating animal products again, finding local sources after doing it for a couple of years. I should ask her more about that, like how that's been going. But I just remembered that that they're like they're now just getting more comfortable with proper treatment of animals. Like it, I mean, when you see like horror footage essentially of like how like commercial animals are raised, like, yeah, that's pretty gross. I probably wouldn't eat it either, except that I kind of like it. So I like the taste. I don't like the treatment, obviously, but do better. Anything you want to wrap up on, Guy?
I'll turn my camera off here a minute.
All right.
I don't know. I guess some of my last thoughts. I mean, going back to that whole original tweet that you guys kind of brought up, I noticed that a lot of the vegans that we're trying to have discussions with wouldn't really, I don't know, they wouldn't say anything against indigenous people eating meat. And I found that interesting because to me, that said there was either an element of racism or at the very least paternalism there. Maybe viewing them as a less evolved life form or something. But the bottom line is, I think that I can only speak from our experience here in Southeast Alaska. There's a significant lack of vitamin D, but somehow magically salmon, which is the most prolific meat source, is packed with it.
Sure.
And I would say there's something to say for that. And there's something to be said for the people who live in the Arctic Circle who manage to thrive on eating reindeer and caribou and narwhal and other meat sources like that. So yeah, I think veganism is privileged, and but at the same time, I think that if we can all just have conversations, if we can all talk about where our foundation is coming from, that's the place we all need to start, because you really can't have a conversation if you're arguing just kind of, if you're arguing like global currency is just floating in the air and not tied down to anything. So I guess that's all I got to say.
Sure. Anybody got anything else? Otherwise, we wrap up here.
got nothing.
Cool. Well, long story, you want to tell people where they can find you and follow you?
Sure, we're on Facebook, Long Story Farms, and on Twitter, Long Story Farms. My wife does some stuff on Instagram. If you can find her, not sure the handle. I think it's at Long Story Farms as well. But that's our social media presence. I don't have a website yet. Working on that, hopefully soon. But yeah, and we're at the Newberry and Whitmire Farmers Markets here in South Carolina. If anybody's in that area.
Go ahead, Josiah.
Josiah Young. I'm on Twitter as Inventive15. And that's all I got for social media.
Guy?
I think my Twitter is at Real Kalo Jones, CALOJONES. Yeah, you can follow me if you want, but I don't really say anything worthwhile. So
I doubt that. We get into it pretty good. At least today we did. It was damn funny. We had a damn funny conversation. But and I am Matt DeRozier of A Farm Hop Life. You can check me out anywhere and everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun crap. So I appreciate everyone watching and listening. And next week we're going to be talking about mindsets that need to die. I'm excited for this one. It'll be fun. So catch you next week.
All right, thanks, guys.
Oh wow.